Subject matter today, assignment deals. You have my contact info, obviously. You remember Yash? Hey, Yash. Okay, we know practice areas. We know multiple offices. We know virtual and paperless. We know you can take pictures and post this on social media if you want. Yes?
Yes.
Beautiful. Hey, everybody's listening to the Chosen Life podcast. We're about motivation, mindfulness, and self-improvement. This is our theme. At some point, each of you are going to be on the show and talk about your journey into motivation, mindfulness, and self-improvement. Okay, everybody's got their copy, their hard work and reading about? Yes? Okay, good. So, done? And on to assignments. One of my favorite subject matters in the world. We came together originally, Elena Saradidis and I, because of assignments, right? Because she heard rumors that I was the assignment king of Toronto. And I tell people I can do things other than assignments. They believe that all I do in life is assignments. I really enjoy it. I found it to be a very interesting transaction where I got into assignments. Actually, I had a client and they bought 5 or 6 units at the time and said, this is the greatest thing ever because I'm buying this contract. I have to put barely any money down. I'm going to make a ton of money, never have to have anything registered, and I walk off into the sunset. I said to them at the time, this is many, many years ago, I said, you may want to speak to your accountant. Pretty sure you got to pay taxes on that thing. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. So since that one appointment where it got me kickstarted on assignments to where I am today, CRA, from my understanding, went off, made their own department, hired a bunch of people just to look into assignments. They said, this is a huge cash cow for us that we're not paying enough attention to. And we want to make sure we're getting all our tax dollars on it. So we'll kind of jump into it in and out. But one of the first things to kind of scale back in this, you're going to be working with clients who are interested in buying or selling an assignment. The first thing in life, you're going to message them and tell them before you're going to list this for an assignment, before you decide to go buy an assignment, talk to a lawyer, talk to the accountant, make sure legal, tax-wise, you're comfortable with what you're doing here ahead of time, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on with assignments. What you don't want to happen is the worst case scenario is you have a firm deal with a client buying or selling under assignment, and it turns out there's a tax issue, a legal issue, and they took your advice on it or what they thought was your advice. You don't want to, as a realtor, give advice on this stuff. You want to understand that there's potential implications. You like the word potential, so there's potential for issues. Lawyer, accountant, did you speak to them? Did you get yourself satisfied? Now let's go ahead with it. You're not giving the legal and tax advice. Fair? Good. So one of the first things, misconception-wise, as far as how assignments works, a lot of people think it's just new construction condos. It's not. It's on houses and condos and also on resale. They don't happen as much on resale. That's usually more popular in BC, I'm understanding. I get it on occasion, but we can do the same principles. Somebody buys a resale house, let's say in Toronto, and they're saying, okay, I don't want to continue with this deal, so I'm going to flip it to somebody else, let them close it, I'm going to sell the contract. If you have a client that is purchasing a property and they tell you, I want to reassign this deal, I want to have the ability to close under a different name, maybe it's a family member, whatever, I want to close under my corporation, we have to have a special clause in that deal from the beginning with the resale person, otherwise probably not going to happen. And they're going to get a mortgage and they want to make sure all the paperwork is signed properly. So if the original vendor, the person who's selling you the house, if they don't sign off to change the deal as to who's buying it, then usually the mortgage is going to come back and say, yeah, we want the names on the agreement to match the mortgage. It's a cash deal. It's a different scenario. But bottom line is you're doing a resale transaction. One of the first things you always should be asking your clients as a realtor, what's your intention with this property? Are you going to be living there? Is a family member going to live there? Flipping it, renting it out? What are you going to game plan with it? Based on what their intention, now things change obviously and circumstances change, right? So what you decide to do with the property before closing versus what happens at closing may change. Or you may have the property and then 3 years down the road it's going to change. Everything based on whose name the property is under, what you're using the property for can have tax implications big time. And so if you know ahead of time what your rightful way to set up a property, try to do it from day one versus try to fix it after the fact. In new construction, what happens to us a lot is builders come back to us where we sign a deal under a personal name. The accountant says, no, I want you to close your new condo under a corp. And then you come back to the builder and the builder's like, yeah, we're not going to let you do that. and you can't just sign a direction for that. We're not going to do an amendment for that. We want you to do it as an assignment. So you may burn through an assignment just to change the name on the title to your corporation or to a family member. So this is where resale, I told you, know what's going on. Even when you're doing new construction, your client may plan to assign, they may not. You should know from new construction, from the second you walk into that sales office, okay, how are we planning to close this thing? What name is it going in under? What are you going to do with this property? Because depending on what the game plan is, you may be very different what you're doing with this property on closing. So if we know, for example, this client needs to have it under a corporation, try to sign the agreement with the corporation from day one at the sales office. They may tell you, we'll allow the corporation, but it has to be the personal name too, just so we have somebody to sue if this doesn't close, but we'll let you close it under the corp versus having to try to fix it after the deal goes firm. So things to think about, but no, new, resale, house, condos, assignments all apply. So again, we can make this very fun and interactive. So we have the microphones. Anybody has questions, you can feel free to jump in at any point. If you've had a transaction like this, if you contemplate something like this, you're not sure, now's the time. So at any of these points, please jump in. Very often for a lot of you as realtors, you're going to find, again, it's going to be somebody who comes to you and tells you, hey, I want to buy new construction. I heard the sales office opening up. Can you come help me? Can you contact them? Can you get me a unit in this project? From that first conversation, again, before you even get into that sales office, have your game plan with your buyer and tell them, what are we going to be doing here? So one of the things, a giant misconception I find as far as how new construction works, Elena Saradidis can tell you this. So they'll often tell you at the sales office, oh, the lawyers will take care of it. Don't worry about it. Just sign, and then let the lawyers handle. The way it actually works is like this. So your client goes to sign a purchase of a new condo at a sales office. Okay, it's conditional for 10 days. They bring it to their lawyer. I, as a lawyer, come to them, okay, you want to put under a different name. You want to cap these levies. You want to delete these costs. So it goes from the buyer's lawyer to the builder's lawyer. Builder's lawyer sends it right back to the sales office, and sales office says yes, no, like they mark it up and they send it back to the lawyer. So it's kind of a stupid middle step, right? And heavily avoided if the sales office just dealt with it from day one. So one of the first things I advocate when you're doing new construction and you're at the sales office is tell them, listen, don't BS me. I know you know what your client, the vendor, is agreeing to or not agreeing to. Just give me now all the capping sheets. You have them ready to go. You know what costs you're going to delete, which costs you're going to cap, what they're allowing for assignments, what they're not allowing assignments. Everything your client, the seller, is agreeing to now, just put it part of the deal. Now the lawyer is going to ask for it anyways. So I would say maybe at least 30, 40% of the time, when I work with a realtor that knows that and pushes the sales office, by the time I get the deal, we've already got all the stuff ready to go instead of trying to pull teeth with the seller's lawyer who has to pull it from the sales office. Also, by the way, the seller's lawyer is not getting paid at the beginning at all. So they don't care about the transaction at the beginning. They're only getting paid at the end and when the occupancy closing and final closing, okay? So they have no incentive to want to deal with it. It's a big annoyance for them. So this is where so as a realtor, speaking with the lawyer, making a game plan ahead of time with your client before even going to the sales office will help expedite a lot on assignments. And with the assignments, I'll throw in as a caution, not all clauses are created equally. So when you do have a builder office that gives you anything at all, you have to read it. You really have to interact with those amendments. They're very, very short. But they'll say, for example, we're allowing assignments. And you can go ahead and write to us. We have to have X number of units sold. We have to have a certain date, perhaps. Sometimes they like to do it before occupancy, after occupancy, whatever it is. But very often, the builder will put into the agreement that assignments are based on the builder's consent, which they can unreasonably withhold. If I can unreasonably withhold something, that's the same as saying no, and that's it. So what we want is reasonable for consent. And what the reasonable generally falls onto is, does this person have the money and can they close? They're going to ask for proof of financing. Very, very simple. But if you're getting that assignment clause, the two things I look for most importantly, number one is how do we get the consent? Number two, what they're charging for it. So another big mistake people do is they get, as a realtor, I got you the assignment clause, no problem. First of all, a builder can withhold a consent. Then number two, they don't say what the assignment fee is. They say, and there will be an assignment fee. So one of the examples I love to give. So I have a client of mine, can't say who they are obviously, but they're a very, very well-known realtor. So they came to the builder, their friend, and says, look, I have a project that's coming up. I'm going on vacation this weekend. I want to come to you on Friday. A friend of mine is going to sign off on the deal for me just to hold the unit for me. I'll come back Monday. We'll change it into my name. No problem. I need the right to assignment. I'm going to sign this. Is that cool? Absolutely. So the friend goes and signs a deal for them with the builder's office. Monday, the person comes back to the builder and says, look, you told me we can put it in my name now. Let's sign the amendment. Builder comes back and says, my accountant says that for our accounting purposes, we need an amendment. We can't use the amendment. We're going to do an assignment. That's how it's going to show up. So don't be alarmed with it. We're just going to show it as an assignment. It's all good. So they signed the assignment deal and they assigned it from the friend to this person. Then 3 years, whatever it was down the road, they decide they're going to sell it. They go ahead and find a buyer for it. They sign the assignment agreement, come now to the builder for consent. Builder says, so I told you we have a right to assignment. You burned through that right to assignment when you did that change over to your friends. Sorry, like that's how life goes. But I'm a reasonable person. Like I'll give you another right to assign, 20 grand, no problem. So very, very expensive thing on it. Very common on new construction. You will hear, we never told you that, you misunderstood that, that person doesn't work here anymore. Meaning get everything in writing all the time. When you're dealing with new construction and they promised you certain upgrades, they promised you certain incentives, get it all in writing right away. Okay? So from day one, making sure our agreements are written properly, that's going to make for much, much smoother assignments. Even something along, I get it all the time. I'm buying this for my daughter. I want a spouse. I don't want a spouse, whatever it is. Get it from day one on the agreement. And if you're not getting it day one from the agreement, make sure that the assignment, the new construction deal allows to add family members. That actually has to be explicit. Even the right to lease the unit during occupancy. So you have a right to assign. So you have the right to assign and sell the contract. You don't have the right to lease it during occupancy. And then they'll pull BS where you may have a right to assign, but it's got to be with their people, right? Their realtors. They won't let you put it on the MLS. So everything in life is negotiable. The question is whether the builders allow it or not. In a weaker market, they're more likely going to give more incentives. In a stronger market, when stuff is flying, which is not the market currently, obviously, they're less likely to do it. So just note that again, if you don't push hard enough, you don't get. So you have to be able to finagle, I would say, and be strong with the sales office and say, I have somebody ready to buy, but this is very important to me. And they'll tell you, nope, we're not allowing assignments whatsoever. Yes, they can go to a lawyer, but again, what's going to happen is we're going to write to the builder's lawyer. They're going to send it back to the sales office. So I would say the hottest time to do it is when you're actually signing a deal. Whatever you're planning or need for your client, try to get it right there and then. People make the mistake all the time of coming to me and, okay, now the conditional deal, I want to add upgrades. I want a fireplace. I'm not their decor department. I'm not doing this. So when you're negotiating the price, if you're planning for any upgrades, asking, that's the time to do it at the sales office. Okay. So far, any questions, anybody? No? Okay. If I show of hands, how many people here have done an assignment deal before? Show of hands, how many people want to do an assignment deal?
My hand is down. My hand is always up. Okay.
There's one person here lying, I can tell, because they hesitated very much, but they had to put their hand up. Yeah. The thing is, a lot of people that were realtors that were in assignments got out of assignments because they got freaked out. They said too many steps, it's too difficult. But the truth is, if you think about it, you come to your client, to the sales office, you help them buy the unit, there's a commission. Then you help them sell by assignment, there's another commission. You can have 2 commissions out of this thing on the same deal. It's pretty freaking awesome, right? So there are incentives, or then you may have helped them lease it, so there's another commission. So from a realtor's point of view, it could be really, really good as long as you know what you're getting yourself into.
So you should not let your client buy with the purpose of assigning. I'm sorry. You want me to use the microphone?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll use the microphone. No, I don't want to use the microphone.
No, sorry. State your name and city you're in.
What I was going to say is don't go into the assignment deal. Like, don't go into the new construction contract with the idea that you're going to assign. Like, don't tell your client, bank on assigning, bank on closing. And if, God forbid, we need to assign, have the clause in it don't just buy to assign. Because like that's how people got caught, especially in this market. And now they're selling for less than what they bought it for. So just be cautious.
Very good point. Now, the other thing is you can't have every single thing in life. So if you're negotiating really hard for the assignment and they allow for the assignment at a lower assignment fee, you may not get other incentives. So for somebody that says, I'm buying this 1,000% to live here, this is my dream project in my dream location, there's no way I'm ever going to sell this, we may not work as hard for them for an assignment because we'll get them a whole bunch of other incentives because they're not going to give you everything under the sun. You negotiate them a great assignment, but then they're not getting caps and rebates and all that. They may get upset about that. So just be cautious with that, but let them know your circumstances can change. People get sick, people get divorced, people get change their jobs, family member needs them. There's a whole bunch of reasons why people buy a new construction unit and then things change for them, They meet somebody. I remember meeting someone, they bought a new construction, they met somebody, they had bought a new construction, now they figure out which one they're gonna live in. So, but they didn't think that when they originally bought it. So one of the things to throw out is, it's not a bad idea to have this. Doesn't mean you're going to assign it, but your circumstances may change and may be good for you. On the negative part, there are people, of course, that think they're going to be able to close. They ended up buying another house, buying another property. They can't get the second mortgage for whatever reason. It's not happening. So they're saying, well, I'm just going to assign it then. For them, an assignment may work a lot better so they don't actually have to physically register this thing versus having to still close or find a way to close when there's no money there. They have to remember as a buyer, if you close your new construction, you're going to pay the land transfer tax in most cases, unless you're a first-time buyer, in which case you're still going to, burn through your rebate, obviously. But then issue number 2 with it is the HST. So HST rebate, everybody's pretty familiar with your construction, how it works, right? So builders...
Do it. Say it again.
Absolutely. Which I was about to do anyways. So new construction, prices all in with HST. So builders going to remit HST out of that purchase price. So they sold you for 500, prices all in. There's HST baked into the 500. They're taking that 30%, they're remitting it. But they're saying, hey, I know the government offers 2 different incentives on this HST where they want to give money back to help people. One is if you're using it as a primary residence or immediate family member, parents, children, grandparents. I don't think even siblings count in that, and cousins definitely don't count that. So no, I believe siblings do not count that from last time I looked. So if you have that case and with the builder and you say, yes, I'm gonna live there or my immediate family member under the Tax Act, builder comes back and says, okay, cool. Your price is all in with HST. So part of this is coming back, about $24,000. So I'm a good person. What I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna make you pay that 24, sign some papers to the government. I'm going to collect that money from the government after closing. Don't worry, you paid your 500. Don't sweat it. I once had a realtor that said, I want that 24,000. If you read it, it actually belongs to the buyer. Tell the builder, I want to keep it. I told them every single builder in this province knows that money's there. They calculate it into their profits, knowing that they're going to get that money back. They're not going to let you have it. They still insisted on me putting in the request for it. Builder laughed me out of the room. So not happening. So realistic expectations again, that the calculation is that they're getting that rebate back. So note that most buyers in that case don't have to pay it as long as they're going to live there or immediate family member. The other way is as a rental. So the province wants more rental properties. So you sign a long-term lease with a tenant, at least 1 year. Could be during occupancy starting, that's fine. So what happens in that case, the builder will come back and say, look, yeah, so I'm not going to get the 24 grand from you through the government there because it's a rental. I only do it when it's primary, you're living there. I don't want to deal with this. What if the tenant leaves? What if there's an issue with the tenant? It's a fake lease. I don't know. I don't care. So I'm going to actually charge you $24,000, whatever it is, approximately on closing, whatever the rebate works out to. Now you can go to your accountant and you can collect that money back yourself after closing. So this is a case where a buyer has to put forward the money in advance. They have to budget for it, but it's coming back. So fast forward to assignment deals. And in the lovely world of assignments, builder developers have come back and said, so we're not really comfortable dealing with assignments because we don't know the fact that you sold under assignment, if that's going to burn the rebate or not. I don't know if this person bought it intentionally, the first buyer, if they bought it to live there, they bought it to flip it. I don't know how CRA is going to treat it. So 99.999% of builders, what they say is, it's an assignment deal. We're not going to give you the HST rebate, new buyer, and you can go collect it yourself after closing, which is what's been happening. So anytime you have a new buyer who wants to buy under assignment deal, they have to be under the expectation they know whatever their costs are on closing, they're going to be responsible for that additional amount. Now, terminology to sound very smart on assignments, people use new buyer, old buyer. The correct terminology is the original buyer, the one who signed the agreement, is the assignor, the person who held the deal. They assigned it over to the new buyer, that's the assignee. So assignor has it, sold it to assignee. This is an interest in real estate, even though they never physically owned the property, it never got registered, but they're still going to get taxed like that with capital gains, business income. So we talked about the fact that there's the HST rebate. I said to you that was one factor of taxes. Then you have the other CRA loveliness, business income, and capital gains on the money as long as there's a profit. And then there's also HST on the profit. So from the assignor's point of view, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but just so again, you all know that that's there. Assignor sold this thing for a profit. CRA says you're supposed to collect HST and remit it to us from the money you made. So there used to be an ambiguity with this. So years ago, until let's say in the last couple of years, people said, I don't think anybody's remitting HST. We don't know what HST is due on. And one of the big things was the money flowing from the old buyer, new buyer. So assignee pays the assignor on closing. They didn't just pay the profit, they also paid them back their deposit. So the assignor put a deposit down with the builder. When the assignee took over the deal, now they get a credit with the builder for that deposit. They have to give that money back, that reimbursement. So one of the things that there was an ambiguity was, is there HST due on that deposit because it's money flowing from one party to another? And the clarity that the accountants were saying based on these bulletins from CRA that no, but we want to make sure in our assignment deals, we put a clause saying that that original deposit is part of the original purchase price. So there's not double taxation. So why am I telling you this? This is one of the reasons why we have to have a lawyer reviewing our assignment deals ahead of time, because if we don't have that clause in there, that actually could be very difficult for an assignor. Also, on all your transactions, whether it's residential, commercial, resale, new, we know about HST. You know the clause in there saying about HST included in or in addition to, right? Mostly it's on page 2. On assignments, be very, very careful on it. If you're acting for an assignor, they obviously would love for the assignee to pay HST on top of the purchase price. You're an assignee, you're like, hell no, you're remitting it out of the money I'm giving you, so that'd be HST included in. So just be very conscientious who you're acting for and their interest, because a lot of assignment deals I've had, so let's say Elena was a novice in this and she acted for an assignee, closed an assignment successfully. Now she's acting for an assignor and she does the exact same clauses and the exact same thing for an assignor. It's very, very different. If I'm an assignee, I want a whole bunch of clauses in there. If I'm an assignor, I want very, very little in there. So we have a very, very different mindset. And this is where I challenge realtors in general. If you have the case of a transaction and you've done it before on one side of the party, don't use the exact same clause of the exact agreement for the other person. It could be very, very different. So as far as new construction goes, when we actually went and signed the agreement with the sales office, we understand which party it's going under. We understand what's going to be the assignment fees. We can negotiate those ahead of time. What's going to happen from your ends is simple. It's how am I going to get a purchaser for this thing? How am I going to find an assignee? And in most cases, the builder will not allow listings on the MLS, okay? And not just not listing on the MLS, they're looking on Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace. So when you put on public forums, you say, I got a great project in blah, blah, blah. It's on the whatever floor. They figure out it's your client. They could be in default because they're not allowed to list it anywhere. So people say, okay, well, how am I going to sell it then? Well, those realtors have a great network. You go into your WhatsApp group, you go into your private rooms. If you have private chats, just be very conscientious of what you're doing in private versus what you're doing in public. Anything in public, I've had clients that listed on Kijiji. They didn't put the unit number, but they figured out it was them. And right away, they got the termination letter. Builder said, you're in default. We're terminating the deal right now. We're going to sue you. You're losing your deposit. And we have to come back on our hands and knees and beg them, don't do that. There's a misunderstanding. The realtor doesn't understand. But this, and they come back. Some of them come back and say, okay, that's fine. $2,000 fine or $2,000 admin fee for us having to deal with this. So they find a way. The process, as far as from assignments, I don't like wasting my time and not get paid. Do any of you like to work and not get paid? You'd rather do anything in life than work and not get paid, right? Literally. Like, I'd rather sit in the park and stare at the sun than do somebody's assignment deal and not get paid. So this is where, when you have an assignment deal, pulling it back a little bit, if you were the one negotiated the deal with this person, you went to the sales office, you got them a great assignment clause, everything's great, fantastic. If you are, but you won't have that luxury. In most cases, they're going to contact you. They saw you on social media, you're acting for a family member, whatever, and they're saying, listen, I got this contract. Can you help me assign it? The wrong move as a realtor is to right away start the process, find the buyer, sign an assignment agreement. You haven't even read the original contract yet. So one of the first things is, we're not listing it, we're not doing anything. First of all, you're going to send me the full copy of the agreement, and not just the full copy. I want the amendments, the upgrades, everything. I want to know what we're getting ourselves into. Read it properly. If you're not sure, send it to the lawyer. We'll review it together, figuring it out. Can we list this thing? What's the implications? And then go look for a buyer, then sign an assignment deal, and then go for builder consent. I found people kind of like expedite the processes and are kind of like really jumbled within their minds. So you have the contract in front of you. It's very clear they're allowing for an assignment. So I still always say, I would like to know from the builder's end, are they allowing assignments? Is there any kind of issues? So from your client's point of view, if they're 100% sold on the fact that they are going to assign it, they are not keeping this contract, then we write to the builder's lawyer, or you contact the sales office as a realtor, just checking, making sure, are you allowing assignments currently? Is there any restrictions, and what is the charge for it? So this will help us avoid potential issues going to get an actual assignment deal done and finding out, oh, yeah, we're allowing assignments, but we're not allowing them till occupancy. We're not allowing them till after occupancy. They pulled this BS. So they're saying, hey, we said that we're allowing assignments, but I have gotten responses back. We're actually not allowing them till after occupancy, which is a giant pain in the butt, because then you have to close the occupancy with the one buyer, and then a new buyer has to take over the occupancy from the old buyer. And sometimes the builder doesn't give back the checks, so they're cashing the checks from the assignor. So the assignee has to reimburse them back. It can be a whole mess, but it's good to know what we're getting ourselves into. There's nothing worse to having to go through the whole process of not listing, finding an assignee. They're all good to go. You negotiated that deal only to find out you're not going to have consent, and now the deal's kiboshed. Sometimes they come back and say, we're not giving consent for another 6 months. Can we keep the assignee at bay for 6 months? Not every assignee is going to agree to it. So these are, again, the kind of things it's better to know in advance. But assuming that we've checked ahead of time, we know they're giving consents, we know what the assignment fee is, we found a buyer. Now we want to move the process as quickly as possible, okay? And part of the problem I find now in assignments in that land is we have to have 2 good lawyers, 2 good realtors. Okay, you've heard that one before. Like, if you have one bad professional in that process, it can kibosh the whole thing. So if I'm acting for an assignor and we're gonna go find ourselves a buyer, I make sure they have a lawyer immediately. Like, we're not gonna go searching for a lawyer. I want your lawyer in place now, so when the deal comes in, you're gonna get it reviewed quickly. Then you have a cooperating agent that comes in and says, I have an assignee, they want to present an offer. Great. I want to know who their lawyer is right now. I want to know that they have their mortgage set up. I want everything in place. I've had so many assignment deals die because they didn't get a lawyer hired in time. They didn't give their IDs. They didn't give their social insurance number. They didn't give their proof of mortgage. Stupid, silly stuff.
Just that, like, lawyers can kill the deal because they don't want to do the work too. So like, I've had lawyers be like, you don't want to do an assignment sale. And they'll say it to the person that just put in the offer for the assignment. You just don't want to do it. They'll be like, why not want to do it? Oh, like, it's too much of a headache. Go buy something resale. Like, they will literally ruin the transaction if they have not done it and they're not comfortable with it. The same thing with agents. The moment the agent hasn't done it before and they don't know the paperwork and they don't know something, they'll just be like, oh my God, this is too difficult. Like, I can't do it. So like, I've been in situations where I've done both sides of the transaction for the other agent.
You need to be hands-on regardless as a realtor if you want to see your transaction done so nobody's going to mess it up for you. But on assignments, I agree with you. You need to quarterback everybody. You need to make sure everybody's on side, make sure the lawyer's on side, and keep the ball rolling at all times. I had a lawyer that came back to me on a transaction that was a nightmare to get to the point where everybody's comfortable, to the point they got the lawyer review. And I was acting for the assignor. He's acting for assignee. He's been in this game. Let's say I'm 20 plus years. He's like 40 plus years. And he said to me, I'm kiboshing the deal. I said, what's wrong with it? It's actually perfect. We know the assignment fee. We know the caps. There's no risk. It's a new construction. No, I'm telling my client that I don't want the liability for it and they don't want it either. So we're just going to kill the deal and let them go by resale. After all that work for that. And what am I going to do? You scream to the heavens. We may not have control on that and things may come up like that. But if I'm the assignor and I have two different offers come in, one has their lawyer in place, one has the mortgage, one has the insurance, ID, social insurance, everything ready to go, and the other one, nothing, consider that. Because we want to get that consent as quickly as possible, okay? So when we're helping a person buy a new home or condo, so most days, again, we're doing it new, not resale. It's going to be a house or condo, okay? So making sure we have all these items in line that we talked about. Don't be the one to list it on the MLS or Kijiji without your client being aware of it, and definitely without the consent of the builder. Because I've had realtors that actually went off, didn't tell their client they're doing it, and listed on the MLS. Yeah, they cost themselves $4,000 that way. So, and the thing is, if we haven't confirmed with the builder that we are going to be able to assign and they're consenting, if we go and list on the MLS without their consent, they're looking all the time, they find you, I'm not going to give you that consent now. And if they are, they're going to charge a lot more on the assignment for a fee. So kind of sucks. So drafting of the assignment agreement itself, I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves as realtors. Their brain kind of turns to mush because it's a new deal. It's a little different. One thing you need to know is if you haven't done one before, partner up with somebody that understands in it, because what it's going to come down to is that HST we talked about, HST included in addition to, reading the original builder agreement. Is there a parking? Is there a locker? Understanding what's actually getting transferred. Doing the money calculations of it. This is, again, where people's brains turn to mush for some reason. So remember I talked about when you're acting as a listing agent and your client comes to you and says, I want to sell under assignment, tell them, I don't just want the original agreement. I want all the amendments. I want the upgrades, everything. And then you have to sit and do the math. So you bought $500,000 property. The parking is $50,000. There's another $50,000 in upgrades. The price is now $600,000. It's very clear. You put down 25 and 10 and 10. That's $45,000 deposit. So where the calculations, when you're selling it for a profit and you're calculating out how the numbers work out, every single dollar due to the builder, whether it's written as upgrades, amendment, whatever, that's total what's owing to the builder. Whatever money you put down so far, that's total deposit. Don't care that on the first page it says what the deposit schedule is. If all of a sudden you have upgrades and amendments saying, okay, if the parking is 50, you put down 25. The upgrades are 50, I put down 25. Those are additional deposits. We've had too many clients that the realtor messed up, didn't incorporate the proper deposit schedule. And so when they did the calculations, it's Schedule B on assignments, just so you know. So on assignments, the regular agreement, assignment of agreement purchase and sale, that's between the assignor and assignee, not the builder. Builder's a different deal, okay? Schedule A is where you put all your clauses. Schedule B is where you do the calculations. Schedule C is the attached original builder agreement, plus all amendments, plus all upgrades. So if we don't do the calculations right, and we sold for 600 and we put down 150, but it says we only put down 100, what happens there is you could have the assignee having the benefit of an extra 50K. As I said, you said the deposits were 100. I'm giving you back the 100. That's it. They didn't say that I have to give you back 150. Big problem. Big mistake. I've seen lawyers screw that up as well. Lawyers screw up stuff all the time because they don't know what to look for in it. So again, you do the math right. That's how I do it. I literally do it old fashioned. I pull up on my computer, then I grab a pad of paper if I have to. I write down every single dollar owing from the assignor to the builder, every single dollar of deposit already put down. That's total deposit. That's total purchase price. Very, very easy. If you don't put down those numbers properly, you'll miscalculate the profit, you'll miscalculate deposits. Somebody's going to get screwed out of it. That's what you want to avoid. Any questions on that part? We'll have a copy for you just so you see it. From the assignment agreement, so again, I mentioned to you that there's two different deals. There's actually 3 deals. So when you finish an assignment deal, you have the original agreement between the original buyer, the assignor, and the builder. Then you have the assignment agreement between the assignor and assignee. And there's a third agreement. That's the consent. That's between builder, assignor, and assignee. It's a 3-way deal. So at the end of this, we end up having 3 contracts. So each step along the way, we have to review every single one of them. Even when you get in the consent, Elena Saradidis will tell you, The second the lawyer messages you, hey, the builder gave their consent, do not let your client sign that agreement until the lawyer reviewed it properly. Builders mess up all the time in acknowledging how much deposit's already been put down. They screw up on the parking locker. We want to make sure in their assignment deal, in consenting, that they're acknowledging this is the deal, what's being transferred, how much is owing, how much has already been put down. And they like to stick in, and they've been awesome on this, by the way. They have started a new thing. Are you ready for this one? Okay. So Elena's doing everything by the book. She read exactly like I told her. She got the original agreement, she got the amendments, she got the upgrades. It says in there, all incentives that are from the purchaser are transferable to the new purchaser. So that you actually negotiated this, because in a lot of deals, if you actually read the wording in those builder agreements, it says, we're giving you an incentive. We're giving you $10,000 credit towards upgrades. We're giving you a free parking, whatever. This is only for the original named buyer, not to be transferable to any assignees, okay? Sometimes they're very explicit in that in the original agreement. If that's the case, as an assignee, you're not gonna be very happy about that because you're not getting any benefit of the assignment. But if you're the listing agent and you didn't put a lawyer review clause and you didn't read it properly, what some assignees do with their lawyer and agent, they say, assignor warrants that all incentives to the buyer are transferable to the assignee. Meaning, if the builder rejects it, now the assignor is on the hook for it. Assignors don't love that. So you missed out on a cap. It was a cap of, let's say, the development levies. It was capped at $10,000. Then the builder decided, no, I'm not giving it to you. All of a sudden, you get a bill for 50 grand. Not great. So it's that kind of thing. So let's say we now have the circumstances where it says in the agreement that it's transferable, everybody's happy. In the consent, what they've been doing is they give us a consent agreement and they're saying, okay, we confirm that the assignor is the named buyer. We agreed to transfer the assignee and all the benefits, blah, blah, blah. Assignor is still on the hook till the end of the closing. So do not ever tell your assignor, the original buyer, oh, by transferring this, you're off the hook. Go off to the sunset. You're done. The second that assignee takes over the deal, you're out of it. You're not out of it. Because what the builder does is they do not release you out of the deal. What they're saying is, assignor, we're letting you transfer over, but turns out this assignee flakes on us at the last second, we can come after you to close the deal. Assignors don't always realize that. But another lovely clause, which they put in little, I actually had one where everything was like in 12 New Roman, you can tell, and it was like 15 points. All of a sudden, before the signature line, a number 16 came in at like 9 font in Arial, and it says, any incentives, despite what's written in the agreement, by giving this assignment consent, is not transferable anymore. So they overrid their promise to transfer over the consent on the consent simply because they wanted to. And their argument is, it says that we can be unreasonable in withholding our consent. So we're not going to be unreasonable. We are going to agree. We're going to give you the consent. We're not even charging you a big assignment fee, but we wiped out all the incentives. That's one of the perks of what we're putting in to allow you to do this assignment. So here you negotiated this whole thing and it's all wiped out. So this is where make sure to read these deals. They're very, very sneaky in it because look, from the builder's point of view, their costs have gone up, right? Everybody hears about materials and labor and blah, blah. They signed this deal 3-5 years ago. It's now cost through the roof. So they're saying, hey, whatever I can recoup, I'm going to recoup. Some of them have clauses in their deal saying that if our costs go up, we'll just pass that along to the buyer without saying a dollar figure. So pretty scary stuff. But when you have a blanket cost factor like that, we want to try to negotiate out of that. So again, assignors should try to limit their exposure. When they first sign a deal, assignee has to limit theirs as well. A lot of assignees don't, but I've had assignors that saying, look, I don't want to lose the deal, so I'll cover everything on top of what the builder doesn't give. It can be a very, very expensive proposition. Okay, again, I talked about having lawyer review. Also, financing clause. Not all assignees are getting mortgages on their assignment deals. And when they do get a mortgage, it's on the original builder price, not on the new assignment price with profit. So you decide to pay $200 over the builder costs, you might get a mortgage with that extra $200. So be very careful. HST, we talked about it. So again, there's multiple levels of HST. Even something silly, the builder prepares the transfer to transfer the property, their lawyer, into the new buyer's name. When there's an assignment deal, you actually have to pay land transfer tax on the assignment price, not on the original price. But a lot of lawyers that are very inexperienced on assignments, when they go to do the closing with the builder, they just leave whatever the builder put in. They pay land transfer tax based on what the builder put into it. The builder doesn't know what the assignment price is, so the builder can't put that in. Your client acting with an assignee that doesn't have an experienced lawyer may get a tax bill for missed land transfer tax and penalties, and that's the lawyer's fault in that. So lots of nice little levels. That's where, again, if we have a lawyer on site from day one and you told your client the assignment deal, just speak to your accountant. Make sure your accountant understands real estate. This is not to dissuade them or scare them or kibosh the deal, but it's nice for them to know what they're doing with eyes wide open, okay? And we have some sample clauses in here for you. One of the things I told you was in your Schedule A about not having to pay HST on the reimbursement of deposit. All it takes is one little clause in there, and that helps eliminate that risk. A lot of people are not using that clause, don't know why, but it's there. Okay, assignment fees. Generally, I would say another thing of assignments, and you'll have a little checklist at the end of this, why assignments get kiboshed. It's going in with unrealistic expectations. If you have an assignor and says, I don't want to pay the assignment fee, make sure any deals I get in, I want the assignee to pay for it. Please tell them no. Tell them, look, every deal, it says in the standard verbiage, assignor pays assignment fees. No assignee in the right mind is going to want to pay it. Work it out into your profit and change your purchase price then. Don't try to put things onto the assignee that they don't want to pay for. If you're going to list this thing for sale and then try to put on the assignee to pay the assignment fee to the builder, they're going to pay the HST on top of the purchase price. It's probably not going to go. So unless you have like the hottest property in a market where huge incentives, they may agree to it. Don't set yourself up from the beginning for failure. So this is where a realtor has to speak to their client from realistic expectation. Same thing when you're acting for an assignee, tell them, hey, speak to your accountant and lawyer because whatever you're buying here, I want you to think of it this way. This is the best way I tell assignees. Imagine you went to the builder's office and you signed a deal with the builder. The second the builder gives consent, they're wiping out the name of the old buyer. They're putting in the name of the new buyer. This is your contract, okay? So this is like a 70-page document. Would you have gone to review that with a lawyer before signing it? Maybe. Would you have had a conditional period? Yes. So now you're taking over somebody else's contract. Make sure you review with your lawyer so you know what you signed so you feel comfortable with it. That's it. We don't want to kill deals, but we want people to go in with eyes wide open so they understand. When you buy new construction, don't tell me as a buyer that when it comes time to close with the builder, why am I paying hydro water meters? Why am I paying development levies, park levies? Why am I getting charged for all this stuff? Because that's how new construction works. Okay? Unless we're literally buying in the outskirts outside of Toronto, there's gonna be a whole bunch of extra adjustments like we would in any new construction. Assignees that don't understand that with a realtor and freak out, that's not a good thing. So the same way we would explain to somebody when they buy new construction in the beginning, we need to explain to assignees. So again, they go in with an eye wide open. That's all. This is an example of Schedule B, so you know how calculations work, okay? So very, very simple. We won't get into the math of it, but just simply know the assignment price minus the builder price, that's the profit. Then they're gonna reimburse back the original deposit from the builder. So when you put down $150,000 as an assignor to the builder, and then turns out that the assignee is taking over that contract, the second the builder gives their consent, this assignee has now $150,000 of credit with this builder. So it's only fair that this person gets reimbursed back for the money. So that's how we do the calculations, minus the deposit from the assignment. Those are the four main numbers we need. Make sure you have your calculations correct from day one. So from the point of view from the monies, major question is whether you're acting as assignor or assignee, when do you pay the profit and when do you pay the deposit back? That's it. I sold for $500, I paid $400 to the builder, it's $100,000 in profit. I put $50,000 with the builder, you have a credit for $50, so now you owe me $150,000. I want $100 in profit, I want $50 in deposit. If I'm the assignee, I don't want to pay till final closing. If I'm the assignor, I want it right now. So again, this is give and take. We can work all sorts of payment schedules. We can say X amount of dollars due upon consent or 2 days of consent. There's X amount of dollars due during occupancy. There's X amount of dollars during final. So we can actually stagger when the monies are due. No, there's not one way of doing it. But again, assignee is always going to want to wait to pay it, and assignor is going to want their money up front. So we need to find a balance. What I would say is, at the very least, there's a credit out there with the builder that the assignor paid out of pocket. The assignee should at least reimburse that much. But again, some of them, the assignees come back and say, I don't have the money. It's going to come from my mortgage. So the buyers, the assignees in a hot market that say, hey, I'm giving you all your profit and the deposit up front as soon as we get consent. That's the kind of buyer we want to work with, right? They may even get the property at a better rate simply because they could put all the money up front. So again, all about negotiations. And of course, new construction, you all understand the occupancy closing, final closing, right? So when we're buying new construction, we know that in condos, very often there's going to be two closings with the builder. One is the occupancy period where we don't actually own the unit as a buyer, but we're allowed to occupy it. We're paying the builder a monthly amount. People call it a rental period. It's not rent. You're paying the equivalent of your mortgage, your property taxes, and your common expenses. So you're living there, you don't own it, you can't do anything with this unit, you can't rent it out without the builder's consent, you can't go and break down walls, you can't do anything with it, it's not your property yet. Final closing comes, that's when the building is registered, that's when the property gets put in your name. Final closing is when you physically own it. So on assignment deals, when you have a buyer and assignee, very often, so Elena brings me these people, they're first-time buyers, have never owned property ever anywhere in the world. They're gonna buy by assignment. They're gonna have three closings. They're gonna have the assignment closing with the assignor, occupancy closing with the builder, final closing with builder. Three closings, you've never done a transaction. You've done the most complicated transaction, and you have three closings in one. That's why the lawyer's expense is so much, because we're physically closing three transactions. So questions, comments? No, everybody is loving this, right? Okay. So again, we have the considerations we went through as far as items, as far as on assignments. Occupancy closing, just be very careful with it. I want to make sure, again, one of the first questions I'll have for you, and you ask your assignor, okay, I just made off the street, you found me on social media, what stage is this thing in? Is there a shovel in the ground already? Is the thing been built? Did you close occupancy or not? This makes a very big difference. This may affect if we can even get the consent, and it may affect how we're going to do our assignment deal. If the property is already in occupancy, we have to put clauses in there to make sure the assignor or assignee have a smooth transition, because you're not getting the keys from the builder then. When you close on an assignment during occupancy, the assignor has to hand over the keys. They've paid an occupancy fee for that month. That has to get reimbursed back. And then who takes over occupancy going forward? I don't know if you've had them. I've had a couple where the builder is a jerk and says, yeah, I'm lazy, so I'm just going to keep all the checks from the assignor. I'm going to keep cashing those checks, even though we've already transferred the property to the assignee. You can get reimbursed between yourselves. So a little bit of a pain. So it doesn't happen often, but things to know early on if we put proper clauses in there. CRA, we talked about their crackdown. So I mentioned it earlier, very simple. I want you to picture it this way. So we have closed now on a building. Everybody has now been registered. CRA comes back to the builder developer and says, I want a list of all the people or the named buyers on the agreements. We're going to compare that to all the people who got registered or are the actual owners. And CRA sits there and compares. Okay, you're the named buyer on the agreement, but you're the one who closed on it. Okay, I'm going to disqualify you for the HST rebate, just like that, And they go around and cracking down on these assignments. And then you have to come back through your account and say, no, I bought under assignment. I am living in there. My immediate family members living in there. It gets quite testy in there. So CRA said, hey, there's a bunch of capital gains, business income we didn't get. There's a bunch of HST we missed. So let's crack down on it. So CRA got very smart about it. This is where you have to know, have an account set up immediately. If you're a buyer, if you are acting as a realtor, make sure you're a assignor or assignee. Have accountants because they have to file everything. The assignor needs to pay business income or capital gains depending on how they qualify. And if you're a professional in real estate, when you sell their assignment, they're not going to just do capital gains. They're going to charge you business income, which is a much higher amount. So not too fun. And HST rebates, we talked about those. Okay, we talked about completing our agreements, making sure everything is set up properly. Boom. Talked about the amount of closings. So lastly, why do assignments actually die? So this is, again, if you're going to get a PDF of this, so if you can't sleep at night, go back to it. This will put you to sleep, no problem. And just fast forward to the last section. Remember, why do assignments die? Not explaining things properly to the client, not understanding the numbers, not applying properly for the builder consent or being fast about it, getting all our information in order, understanding who pays the assignment fee, advertising this on MLS when we weren't supposed to. Okay. Signees not understanding as far as getting the financing in order ahead of time, understanding about the HST and who pays the occupancy costs. Okay, so there's a lot that goes into this at the end of the day. So scaling it back again, if you haven't done before, it's a really good exercise. Speak to your lawyer, call me up. What I would tell you is, okay, so you're going to be listing a property now. Great. I want you to work out your numbers, send me the agreement and all the amendments and the upgrades. I'll do my numbers, and then let's compare where we're each at. You'll be amazed on things that could be easily missed that way. Then, nothing wrong with preparing an assignment agreement for your client, having the lawyer review it ahead of time, even before the client signs it. Some people don't mind in doing a sloppy agreement, getting everybody to sign it and saying the lawyers will fix it during the conditional period. But here's the problem with that. We do an agreement that's very in favor of the other side, whichever side we're on. Make it conditional lawyer review. The lawyer goes and changes a whole bunch of stuff. Guess what? Their lawyer's already seen the good version of it. They're not going to agree to those changes. So what I would want to do is I'd want the agreement signed properly with the proper clauses before the other lawyer even sees it. We don't have to put ideas in their head. So doing it correctly from day one, way better than doing a sloppy deal and trying to fix it after the fact during the conditional period. So things to think about. So that's assignments in a nutshell. Questions, comments? How do you feel more likely to want to do assignments now or less after hearing that?
No, it's they haven't done one yet.
Me and Elena are looking at each other like,
Okay, I like torturing myself. Yeah, if you didn't, then you wouldn't even realize it. It's nice to know. No, it's good to know about it because you've already had clients asking you about it. Like you've had clients ask you about like pre-construction, if it's worth it. This is a topic. It's like, it's a good thing to know about it. That way you can at least speak knowledgeably about it.
I see two ways that this is going to work in your favor by doing assignments. Number one, existing or potential existing clients. You come back to them and say, I don't do this. Guess what? They're going to go work with somebody else. Now, if they worked with them on a complicated transaction like assignments, they're probably going to continue working with that person for other stuff in the future. Like I was saying, commercial. If you handle a commercial purchase with a client, but they come back to them and say, oh, there's a bunch of tenants in here. I don't do leases. Do you send them to another realtor to do leases? They're probably going to work with that leasing agent for the next transactions. Number two, you're opening yourself a whole opportunity of transactions where other realtors aren't taking it. Gets you more ingrained in new construction, gets you more involved with leasing potentially in residential, and it could be multiple transactions out of the same deal. So assignments, the people that specialize or do a lot of assignments do very, very well with it because they found a giant opportunity. But then it comes back to the whole idea, what builders do you work with and developers? How involved are you with their projects? The very popular ones, are you getting allocations? How are you getting your clients' units? So it kind of starts like that. When you get to a point in life when you have a client that, you know, is a multi-millionaire, billionaire, whatever, and they like to buy 2 to 3 units a year, and you're telling them, oh, this project, that project, like that's the gift that keeps on giving, especially the ones that assign the units as well. So these are, once you have repeat business like that, but you're not going to have those kind of people if you don't understand new construction and if you're not doing assignments, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much for having us today.